If you have struggled to be taken seriously or heard on your fertility journey, or you're tired of having to advocate for yourself yet again as you're struggling to get pregnant, then today's episode is exactly what you need to hear. I get to sit down with Kellie Johnson, who shares her powerful story of navigating years of pain, infertility, and loss, and how she found her voice again within a medical system who completely overlooked what she was going through. So whether you're living with a diagnosis, facing fertility challenges, or simply trying to understand your body more deeply, this episode will leave you feeling seen, supported, and empowered to speak up. Welcome to your journey to fertility. This is the podcast that blends science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so that you can stop stressing that you'll never have your baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast. Welcome back to the podcast, and thank you so much for being here today and sharing your energy with me. And this episode that we have coming up is a really, really important one because for so many women, the path to motherhood is made more complicated by something that is so often misdiagnosed or misunderstood, and that is endometriosis. And I have a wonderful guest in the studio today, Kellie Johnson, who knows this journey firsthand. She is an endometriosis and fertility advocate and the founder of Cozy, a company born out of her own long battle with chronic illness. After years of struggling to get answers, enduring multiple surgeries, IVF cycles, and heartbreaking pregnancy losses, Kellie knew she had to speak up. So, in this conversation, we are going to go in depth to speak a little bit more about what it really means to advocate for yourself and within the medical system, how to push for answers and to really get that right and correct care team around you, and how to hold on to hope when you feel like your body and your future are so out of control. So, Kellie, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen.
I met you, it was probably about a year ago, wasn't it? We spoke at an endometriosis event together at a fertility clinic, and I was so taken by your story and the way that you shared it and how much I think it brought hope to those who were there and listening. So I would love to go into that. Please, can we start by learning a little bit more about you? So who are you and what has brought us here today?
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. So I'm Kellie. I'm the founder of Cozy. You might have seen us on Shark Tank Australia last year. I invented a heat pack for period pain because I have stage 4 endometriosis. And unfortunately, my condition led me to having a total of 7 miscarriages now. I do have one earthside daughter, which is like the best thing that ever happened to me. And I'm hoping now to get baby number 2.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I suppose that has been quite a simplified version of your story, which is probably going back many, many years. But can we start at the beginning? And I would love to know, what were some of those signs or symptoms or those little inklings that you had that perhaps something wasn't quite right?
Yeah, honestly, I should have figured out that something was wrong a lot earlier than I did. But back then, endometriosis wasn't really known about. So I just kind of thought my experience was what a period was like. But my very first period, I remember the pain was so bad I was throwing up. I was only 12 and my mum had to call a doctor to come out and give me an injection to try and stop me from throwing up. And I still didn't really question that that's not normal because it just wasn't known. The first time my mum heard of endometriosis was many years later when I was 24 and I passed out at a party from pain, went to the bathroom and then kind of came back around on the floor. And so I finally took myself to a gynecologist because I thought that's surely not normal, and then found out that I do have endometriosis.
And how was it diagnosed at the time?
Yeah, I'm probably one of the few people who wasn't diagnosed by surgery. The reason is I had a really large endometrioma. It was about 4 or 5 centimeters. People might not realize this, but your ovaries are actually really tiny. They look ginormous when you go and get a scan, but they're like the size of an almond or something. They're really small. So the cyst was really large compared to the size of my ovary. So they could actually see it on an ultrasound, and they call it a chocolate cyst, which basically means that you can see by the density on the scan that it's hemorrhaging and causing damage, and that's how they know it's endometriosis.
And this is when you were a teenager, of course?
I was 24.
24. And were you told kind of around this time that potentially having a family was going to be difficult for you?
Yeah, they did say it's probably best if you have kids soon. And I was 24, so that just went right over my head. There was no way I was ready to have kids, and I didn't, obviously. I went on and traveled the world and grew my career and all the things that a 24-year-old wants to do. But yeah, it was mentioned to me many times over the years that I would probably have issues. I just didn't really think that it would happen to me still. You just kind of think you'll be one of the lucky ones, and that they probably say that to everyone, but you'll be fine. And then when it does happen to you, it's like, oh, okay.
Very relatable.
I have to deal with this now.
We all think we won't be
that
one person that has all of the difficulties that we do.
When you're young, you think you're invincible, I think.
100%.
Yeah.
Totally. And so when it came time to having a family, because I'm sure we all know someone who has endo, who has had a family easily. It's not the end of the world for most women with that diagnosis. So what then happened for you? Was your cycle regular? Was there anything that started causing you problems at the very beginning?
Yeah, I've always had a regular cycle. It's more so been the pain for me. So I had such severe pain that even if I layered all the possible kinds of medications that I could have on top of each other, I'd still be at times like throwing up or almost passing out from pain. And there was a few times I probably went a little bit too hard on painkillers and would be seeing stars and really dizzy. So it wasn't a very good time.
Gosh. And was it something that you managed by taking birth control up until you wanted to have a family?
Yes. So when I got diagnosed when I was 24, they recommended against surgery because my endometrioma was so large. It would take too much of my ovary with it, and along with that, a lot of my eggs, obviously. And they thought that the impact of that on my fertility would be worse than the endometriosis. So they put me on the pill. Back then it was Diane, which is not my favorite pill, I'll just say that.
90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, it's definitely got a lot of negative side effects, including severe depression. But I was on that for at least 10 years. And then when I went off that, it became really clear my endometriosis had been quietly spreading in the background because I went from 0 to 100 in pain real quick. Not that I didn't have pain on the pill, but it wasn't like that next level passing out kind of pain.
Goodness. And so then when you were trying to have a family, was the suggestion that you have surgery?
So when my fertility journey started, I actually fell pregnant by accident. So I naively thought, I knew it. Like, I don't have an issue. I always knew that I would be fine. But unfortunately, I had an early chemical pregnancy, so an early pregnancy loss. And instantly I felt really afraid. The doctors weren't afraid at all. They just sent me home because basically what happened, I went to the GP to find out how far I was. My test results were back and I started bleeding in the waiting room. So I went in. I had cramping and I said, I think something's wrong. And he instantly said, sometimes pregnancies just don't work out, and sent me home. And I was really confused that was what was happening, because when you see a miscarriage on TV, which is really the only time you're exposed to this topic at all, you'll kind of see like a heavily pregnant woman who starts bleeding and goes to hospital. It's not really how miscarriages work. So I had no kind of bar to understand what actually happens. But essentially, that's what happens a lot. You just get sent home and they don't really make a fuss about it.
Oh, and considering it happens, what are the stats? 1 in 4, we say, ends in loss.
Yeah.
How we don't talk about it and how it's never presented to you in sex ed or something that, your mom talks about when you're growing up. I mean, it just blows my mind.
I know.
That we just shovel all of this under the rug and it's like, well, these things happen, go home, you're fine. But no, it is devastating, especially if it's
Yeah.
something you really, really want. So what happened then? Where did your journey start to lead you?
So after that, I think it was when I really realized how much I wanted to become a mum. I wasn't super worried about it before that point. We didn't start actively trying for a while. I can't remember exactly how long it was, but we took a few months off, maybe 6 months. And then we started actively trying. And around 13 months, I think, after my first pregnancy, I fell pregnant again. And they had told me that the odds of having another miscarriage was extremely low. I think it's like 1% chance or something. So again, I thought I'm probably going to be fine, but I was anxious. And then I lost that pregnancy when I was close to 6 weeks, I think. And I again just had this like chill to my bones because from the first one, I felt like something was wrong. But funnily enough, even after 2, they don't really, I think this might have recently changed, but for a very long time, 2 didn't really mean anything. That's just a statistical probability in the medical world. So I did actually have to go to hospital purely because they didn't know if I'd had an ectopic pregnancy, because my levels were really high, but after I started bleeding and cramping and had a scan, they couldn't locate the pregnancy. So that puts you in a risky bucket of, is it in your fallopian tubes? I still don't know if that was the case or not, but after around half a week in hospital, they decided it was safe to send me home, and they concluded that it had probably flushed out from wherever it was on its own. But yeah, it wasn't until my 3rd miscarriage that they started to talk about this recurrent miscarriage and something being wrong, which was really frustrating to me because at that point, it was another year later when my next pregnancy happened. And by that stage, I'd obviously used quite a lot of my fertile years and I was well into my late 30s then.
And that's it. It's so frustrating. You think, yeah, well, I was told at 24 that
Mm.
this was going to be difficult for me.
Yeah.
Yet after 1, 2 miscarriages, I'm told this is still not a problem.
Yeah. I
It's
know.
getting ragey
And
thinking about it.
potentially I could have started doing treatments much earlier. And it's funny because I've had this said to me by doctors more than once, and they say, oh, it's just a numbers game when they talk about getting pregnant again and trying different things. But for you, that's your life. That's a real child that you're, as their mum, trying to save. And it feels so heartless that they're like, let's just try and see what works on this pregnancy. Like it's not a real person in there.
It isn't a numbers game, when it's your life and your emotions. And, when you start going down the path of treatments, your finances as well, which is just not what you need to hear.
I know.
So
I could have so much money right now.
I know. I can't even think about adding up how much we spent on fertility treatments. I did a social post about this a couple of weeks ago. It was to make a joke out of it. It's like, don't look at your bank balance, and it's just easier not to think about. So what really made you then decide to go down the path of assisted treatments?
So my 3rd miscarriage was really traumatic. I got almost the whole way through the first trimester, and my miscarriage that time was a missed miscarriage, which is the most traumatic type in my opinion because you don't know anything's wrong. So we'd had 2 successful scans and got to see the baby swimming around. They all kept saying to me, this is your baby. And then when we went for the 3rd scan, I was actually alone. And I had just come back from my trip where I'd gotten engaged. And we had no reason to think anything was wrong. Obviously, we'd seen the baby and we were almost there, but the baby had passed away. And so I had a procedure called a D&C where they remove the fetus and they do testing. And they found out that I had something called a partial molar pregnancy. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's very dangerous for the mother. And basically, it's a genetic abnormality where there's abnormal cells in the baby that can then become part of you, and it can kind of spread and turn into something that's kind of like cancer. So it's not exactly cancer, but your treatment is chemotherapy and you can die from it. So I had to then get testing for ages to test my HCG, because basically your HCG keeps multiplying into hundreds of thousands or millions if you're getting this condition. So you have to get your HCG tracked down to 0. And I have to do that now for every pregnancy I ever have because I'm at risk of it forever. But because of the genetic abnormality, we wanted to do IVF to try and catch any genetic issues that are going on in the future, try and avoid another. It's called triploidy because basically there's 3 of each genome. I think that's how it works. I can't remember exactly. But we didn't have issues falling pregnant. That's not why we did IVF. It was more for reducing the miscarriages and the genetic testing.
And did you feel that when you started down your IVF path that you were listened to and supported and you found a doctor that really got what you wanted?
Yeah, definitely not. One thing I didn't really understand was that a fertility doctor is kind of an IVF doctor, but I don't know, like they don't really talk to you super much about like just fertility or trying to get naturally pregnant, I found. So I didn't want to immediately go to IVF, and I think it was around the time I had my second miscarriage, so prior to all of this, that I saw my first fertility doctor to find out how I can improve my chances of falling naturally pregnant. And I found that the first doctor just wasn't super interested in that at all. They just wanted me to go to IVF, and I wasn't really keen to do that yet. And I didn't really feel listened to. When I went through that second miscarriage, I felt like my doctor kind of wasn't on my team with me. I felt kind of alone. Whereas my new doctor now, he's lovely and he's so great with that. He was a speaker at the event that we went to. And even with my most recent miscarriage where I didn't go through IVF with him, he was with me every step of the way for them.
It's funny you say that. And I remember I was speaking to a fertility naturopath a few months ago, and she was doing a workshop for my students, and she made this very bold statement. Well, I thought it was very bold. She said, fertility doctors don't specialize in fertility.
Yeah,
I was like, I don't think any doctor wants to hear that. But then she was like, well, explain to me how they help your body's natural ability to conceive. And I was like, well, that's not their job, is it? Their job is to get you pregnant with the tools that they have, which are surgeries, medications, and procedures. And I found that a bit confronting. And for someone who has been through many rounds of IVF, I was like, you're right. That isn't why we go there. So I think that's a really important thing to point out for anyone who hasn't been through IVF that is listening to this. I think you have those expectations when you go to a doctor for the first time. Like, they're going to help my body help me get pregnant. But they're not really approaching it in that way. So very good to know. Thank you. So you started your IVF journey and it was actually successful in the end.
No, actually, my daughter wasn't from IVF.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we did 2 rounds of egg collections. The first wasn't very successful. I had plenty of follicles and everything looked fine, but I think from memory, they actually caught a triploidy embryo, another one, which again is like super rare to have another triploidy, but thank goodness it was through IVF and not in my body. And I think the others didn't make it. We might have ended up with 1 or 2 not great quality embryos that were not tested. And we were doing it for the testing, obviously. For anyone who doesn't know, you can't just automatically test every embryo. They have to pass certain conditions where essentially some of the interior of the embryo escapes from the embryo so they can test it without penetrating the embryo. Look up images if that doesn't make sense, or will make more sense when you look at it. So we did another round of egg collections and creating embryos, and I got really close to getting overstimulated. I think I had over 40 something follicles. Wow. So I actually had to cancel a trip I was meant to go on after that, and it was a whole thing because it's quite dangerous to fly in that condition. But we did manage to get a couple more embryos tested, and so we ended up with 2 that were tested and we knew they were good. But unfortunately, I miscarried the first one that was transferred. And then the fertility clinic shut down for Christmas, and we thought we'll just try naturally because we've got another transfer in January. We might as well not waste this month cycle, and that's when my daughter was conceived.
Wow. So what answers, if any, did they give you for, you've been through this round of IVF, you've got the genetically tested embryo, everything on paper looks perfect, it should have worked.
Yeah. They didn't really talk too much about that with me. I had a lot more conversations around that kind of stuff with my reproductive endocrinologist. So he's quite well known. I don't know if we talk about names or anything in this podcast.
Sure, if you want to.
Dr. Mateus was who I was seeing. So there's a few specialists in Australia who will do things like immune protocol for people with repeat miscarriages. So he was more so the one that was managing that side of my care. My fertility doctor is Dr. Marin. He's also very good at doing some of those exploratory things, but Dr. Mateus is like really in depth with that line of things. So he was the one more so that I worked with on why that miscarriage happened with a genetically viable embryo. And so I was on an immune protocol with him for that pregnancy. And what he did was he increased the strength of the steroid that I was on. So I was on prednisolone, and then he put me on dexamethasone, which I absolutely hated. And I really don't want to do that again, but it got me my daughter. So I'm really glad we did that.
So as soon as you found out you had fallen pregnant at home, you were put on that immune protocol just as a safety precaution?
So when I was going down the IVF route, I had heard about Dr. Mateus through the IVF Facebook group. And so I looked him up, and he basically came on the IVF journey with me. So we started doing testing leading up, because anyone who hasn't done IVF before, it can be quite a long process to get started, I found, and I kind of wished I started earlier because I didn't know that. But I had my first IVF appointment in April, and then I conceived in December. So it can actually get so drawn out so easily with all the different tests and appointments and waiting for cycles and all that kind of stuff.
The waiting.
It's
just the waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not even like the 2-week wait. Like,
oh no,
that's the worst wait of all.
Agree. But then having this new pregnancy must have been so hard. And every scan and every time you go to the bathroom, can you talk to me about that pregnancy? And was there a moment where you think you were able to exhale?
Yeah, I actually didn't relax the whole pregnancy, but I did get better throughout. I actually had a bleed with my daughter, and so I actually heated up my cozy heat pack and put it on because I thought, well, I'm having another miscarriage, and I was in pain, and I took myself to hospital. So bad that I put a heat pack on because she was genetically viable and she's earthside now. Don't put a heat pack on in the first trimester, guys. But it worked out okay, luckily. But I took myself to hospital and I said, I'm going through a miscarriage. And the nurse who was in the triage, I remember him saying, oh, you don't know. And I was like, no, I know, because I've been through this so many times and I didn't want to hear it. And then I waited in the waiting room for hours and then just gave up and went home. And I had called my partner. He was at a job interview in Sydney. So I live in the Central Coast. He couldn't even come with me to the hospital because he was so far away. And then I just went to bed that night. And I remember, I think it was Dr. Marin sent me for a scan just to confirm. And I was just like, this is all so pointless. And my husband came with me for the scan. And when they told us there was a heartbeat, we were so shocked. I remember we went afterwards to have lunch and we were just sitting there stunned and we were like, we think that we're actually having this baby. It was crazy.
All the feels, so relatable. I've been asked that so many times with pregnancy after loss. It's like, at what point do you just go, oh, I think I'm okay now. I've got this. There wasn't a point. No. I remember driving to the hospital to give birth thinking, I'm still going to lose him. For no good reason. Just it is so underestimated, the trauma of this journey.
And to make it worse, we actually did almost lose her during the birth. So we had something called a partial placental abruption, which typically results in stillbirth. Luckily, we didn't know that this was going on. They just said, because we went in to get induced at 39 weeks because of my history. And so I was in labor for like 12 hours. And then at a certain point, the nurse was looking at my heart monitor and she said to me, she was really calm, and I'll never forget how calm she was and how much I didn't know something was wrong. And she just said, we've just noticed something on your heart results, and so we've called your doctor. She's going to come in and you're actually going to have a C-section now. And I was like, okay. I was like, is everything okay? And she's like, yeah, it's just something, we can tell from the heart rate that that's what's best for the baby, blah, blah, blah. And I was in pain at this point, which is not abnormal, right? Because I was in labor. And I remember someone came in and jabbed an injection of morphine into my leg. And I was like, okay, something's happening. And they were wheeling me downstairs and it all happened so fast. The doctor got there in 10 minutes.
Wow.
And my daughter was out in 30 and we didn't know until like 3 days later. And that same nurse was on shift with us again. And she said, I went home and told my family about you because we knew you'd had 5 miscarriages and we just didn't want you to lose this baby. And we were like, what do you mean? Like, an emergency C-section happens to everyone. Like you hear of that. And then she was explaining, because the placenta comes off the wall, that's how the baby breathes. And so it doesn't normally have a good outcome. And we're just so, so lucky that we did.
Oh, bless her, Kellie. I want to cry hearing that.
I know. I feel like I'm going to cry talking about it, but I'm pretty good at boxing it all out now.
We get that way. It's a conversation for another day. I want to ask you, at some point, you've mentioned how you didn't want to hear it from nurses or doctors. Like, I know this. Was there a point on this journey where you're like, I am going to have to advocate for myself so much more than I realized, and that's going to be hard? How did you feel, and what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I think by that point, I just was sick of people telling me anything, really, because it had happened to me so many times. So I asked for extra scans if I needed them, and I paid a fortune for extra scans, but it was the only thing that really kept me holding on. And at the end, I went in for so many ultrasounds of her. I was very fortunate to go through a private hospital. So you were allowed to just go there anytime that you felt like the baby's movements had slowed. And she did do that a fair bit at the end, which I now know is probably because of the placenta. So I went in so many times and was like, I need to get her checked. And I just didn't care anymore if people didn't like that or thought I was being too crazy.
You get to that point, isn't it? Like, it's my money, it's my body, it's my baby. You can think what you like.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a good point.
I would get a little bit, because people, I don't know if you found this, but people would push back a bit. At times they'd be like, why are you getting another scan? And I'd be like, I've had 5 miscarriages. Like, don't talk to me. And they'd kind of be like, okay, yep. You know what I mean?
100% people push back. And I think they're trying to do you a favor, save you time, save you money. Even now, I'm not trying to conceive anymore, but when it comes to women's health issues, I'm still advocating for myself and explaining why I would like tests or scans done. And it's like, when does this end?
I know.
When does it end, Kellie?
I'm still doing that so much. Even just creating content around infertility now. I don't know if you've seen my socials the last few days, but it is wild. So many people think trying again and again to have a baby and add to your family is a really strange thing to do, and that you should just give up and save your emotions and save your efforts. There's a lot of comments saying just go and adopt, which anyone on a fertility journey listening will know that is just the worst thing to say. But there's just such a lack of understanding and education out there.
Don't even get me started on secondary infertility. Like, this is, we'll come back into the studio another day and do a whole episode on that, because I experienced both primary and secondary infertility like you did as well. And the second journey I found so much harder.
Yeah.
Because of all of that, it was this, well, why would you want 2 kids? You already got one. What difference does it make? It just, it blows my mind.
I know. So, the amount of people saying, aren't you grateful for your daughter, isn't one.
Oh, yeah, not at all. Not at all. No, I put her in a box and I never think about her. It drives me mental. So many women, I think, struggle to be really heard, and they're often dismissed by, as we've been saying, by medical professionals. So what advice would you give to someone in that position? Where do you even start?
I think the first thing is, if your doctor is not a good fit for you, don't be afraid to go and find a new one, because they're on such a personal journey with you. They all have such different personalities and different ethos about medicine. They have different tolerance for trying different things or trying exploratory things. And that can be really, really important on a fertility journey because there is so much new stuff coming out all the time, and you kind of need someone who's open to different things. The other thing I would say is don't look past alternative medicine or Eastern medicine, because I found that was just such a huge part of my journey, where we're talking about like a fertility doctor doesn't really treat your whole fertility. I found Eastern medicine really does. They look at that whole picture and they help you to explore all of the things that you can be doing and the full picture about what might be happening.
I completely agree. And that beautiful balance with Eastern medicine is just that gift of being able to understand your body a little bit better, which I don't think Western medicine does a very good job of.
Yeah.
That is incredibly powerful for your health, for well beyond the years that you're trying to conceive. So thank you for mentioning that. I know we all have our own diagnoses, or maybe not, on this journey. I think endo, I don't have endo, so I can't speak from experience, but I feel like it is just this very difficult particular beast that so many women deal with that others just have no idea how difficult it is. Can you talk a little bit about how it has impacted your life and your health and your relationships, even your mental health, which you alluded to as well?
Yeah, it really does touch every area of your life. I know with my work, for example, working for an employer, I found that so hard because I'm a really hard worker, obviously, but I felt like, especially my endo was at its worst when I was in year one of a career at a job, right? So I thought constantly they're probably thinking I'm just like taking the piss and I'm probably not really doing anything. I'm just calling in sick all the time because I'm lazy. And I remember I started to feel scared to tell them what was actually happening. And I had a sales job on the road. So I would just start taking my laptop to the hospital with me and like work in the hospital bed so they could see I was online doing stuff, because I didn't want to say I was sick again because I thought they'd probably think I'm faking it.
God, Kelly.
And I remember as well, like when you talk about relationships, obviously you have to cancel on things last minute if you're having an endo flare, stuff like that. But even dating is so hard when you've got something like endometriosis. My husband now, the first time he saw me having an endo flare when it was at its peak, I remember the fear in his eyes and he had no idea what to do. Guys just want to fix everything, right? So I remember him kind of running around the room like while I'm throwing up and he didn't really know what to do. He's so used to it now. But stuff like that's really embarrassing when you're in a brand new relationship and you're throwing up in a bucket in front of this new guy that you like.
Good times.
I know. It worked out well, luckily. It's a good test. It's a good relationship test.
If anything. Gosh. Beyond medical treatments, obviously, and I think that's probably a big part of endo, how else did you manage the mental toll and the emotional toll of this diagnosis?
Yeah, I've had therapy over the years to talk about all of the things I've been through. I was actually really resistant to therapy at first. There's a lot of pride. I think a lot of people struggle with this, feeling like if you go to see a therapist, then you're a bit crazy and you can't manage things on your own, but there's actually no shame in getting help, especially when I was going through my infertility journey. I have a counselor now who specialises in those kind of topics, because I found the first couple of therapists I spoke to didn't really know how to navigate those kind of conversations. But the lady I see now is just amazing, and her name's Therese. I think it's Interconnect Counselling if anyone wants to speak to someone who specialises in that kind of thing.
Thank you. Thank you. I would love to talk about Cozy and how this incredible brand came to be. So where did it start? What was the catalyst for this?
Yeah, I always had a little idea in the back of my mind because I was such a heat pack girly forever. Like if someone found a heat pack in my office, everyone knew it was going to be mine.
They're the best.
I was famous for that. And I was always shoving them down the front and back of my pants because with my endo, my pain doesn't stay where my uterus is. It spreads through my whole torso, down my legs. It's like full body pain. So I just wanted to like wrap myself in heat packs and be able to walk around, because I would literally be at the office and I'd go to make a cup of tea and my pants would be falling down because it was full of heat packs. So it was actually when I was going through IVF after my third miscarriage. And, you know, when you're doing fertility treatments, you're not a lot of fun. Like, you're not really going out doing stuff, are you? Like, and if you do, you're sitting there going, no, I can't drink. I've got an egg collection coming up. Like, it's just not a good time. So
Relatable.
so it was time for a hobby. Let's be real. So I got myself a secondhand sewing machine and I taught myself to sew. And I've literally got videos. I'm like doing my injections and then I'm sitting at my sewing machine and I'm making all these samples. And I remember the first time I tried on the first prototype, it was so bad. Like, rice was falling all over the floor and the stitching's coming apart because I taught myself to sew. But the feeling of being enveloped in heat around my whole uterus was just instantly so soothing. I literally got tears in my eyes. The version that people buy now is so much better than what I made, but the concept is still incredible.
No shade to that first one with the rice falling out. It did its job.
It sure did. I've still got it at home.
And it's an amazing business as well. So you talk about the way that the business has been built, and it is not and I see people making comments on your social media about this as well. Like, it's not like it's here to make millions of dollars, really.
Yeah.
So please speak a little bit more about that and your intention.
Yeah. Obviously, the biggest thing for me is that someone else is going to get that same feeling of relief that I got when I put it on. So, and I found that, I don't know, still today, it's so validating when people message me, and I get so many messages every day from people saying that it's really helping them to get through their day, because endometriosis has no cure. You really just have a toolkit of things that will help you get through the day, and that might include cozy and other things as well, depending on where you are or what your pain's like that day. But it just makes me feel so good that it's helping people.
I'd love to ask you what you would want people to know who are around you, who are supporting you, whether it's the partner or the boyfriend, the husband, the friends, the family. How can they best support someone who's going through endo and or fertility issues?
I would say the biggest thing, especially in light of the last few days on my social media, is not to give unsolicited advice. Most of the time, I think people have good intentions. And to be honest, I can do this too sometimes before I catch myself, because I've got so much knowledge now. But it's assuming that you know better than the person who's going through the journey. And trust me when I say, if they're living with chronic pain or infertility, they have been researching that all hours of the night. They've gone to see all the specialists. They've done all the tests. If they haven't done it yet, it's on their list. Like, it's so unhelpful when you give advice to people. I do sometimes say to people, you know, I can relate, I've been through blah, blah. Like, if you ever want to talk to me about what I did, let me know. And then the ball's in their court. I feel like that is the best thing you can do. And outside of that, just say you're sorry and it sucks. Like, don't try and make them feel better. I know that sounds weird, but it used to really hurt me when people would try to cheer me up, because people would say, don't worry, it's going to work out. Like, at least you can fall pregnant. None of those things make me feel better. I just want you to say, that really sucks, because it does.
100%.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted as well. Just someone to be like, I'm just going to come over. I'm maybe going to bring ice cream.
Yeah.
That's usually a pretty good solution. And just be there. And
just sit next to me.
Sit next to me.
And don't speak.
That's it. Put on some crappy TV.
Yeah.
Speaking of TV, you were on Shark Tank last year, weren't you? Which is such an incredible achievement. So if anyone wants to learn a little bit more about Cozy and everything that you do and the products that you offer, where can they do that?
So if you want to go watch my episode, it's on 10 Play. You can go to the app. I think we are season 2, episode 5, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, if you want to go watch our episode, it's hilarious. I did zap Davey with a period pain device.
No.
And he did collapse to the floor.
Brilliant.
He's the only shark that didn't make us an offer. I'm not saying that's why, but it sounds like a bit of a coincidence, don't you think?
I love it. I love it. I love how tough men think they are. Anyway, in finishing up, Kellie, I'd love to leave everyone who's listening to this with some words of, without being overly, let's give everyone, too much positivity. But how do you stay positive? You're continuing your journey to expand and build your family with all the setbacks and all of the heartache that you've been through. How do you keep going and how do you stay positive?
Yeah, I think the main thing is to embrace wherever you are in that moment. I'm not going to say to you that it's going to work out for you in the way that you want it to, or that there's a divine plan for you or anything like that, because I know how hurtful that can feel. If your journey doesn't end where you want it to, then that's going to really suck. But if you can embrace where you are and try and find the beauty in that moment, I truly think that's the best thing you can do. So, for example, for me right now, it's sharing my journey to try and help others. So when I went through my last miscarriage, it was the only thing that brought me some relief, and I know it did help so many. If you don't have a child yet and you're in between transfers and you can go on a holiday, go do that. If you've got your rainbow baby, then be so grateful for her and know that someone who didn't have this journey is never going to have that same exact gratitude that you do. Like, there's going to be something in this moment for you. You just have to find what it is.
Thank you. I think we can all take from that and know that however it works out, there is something there that is going to change you. And I always hope that some of these things that I've been through have changed me for the better. So
yeah, absolutely.
Kellie, thank you for being here. You're amazing. Thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for sharing your journey so openly, and we so appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening right to the end of this episode. And all of Kellie's links are going to be in the show notes. So if you want to go and grab your own cozy heat pack, I highly recommend that you do. I find that one thing we struggle so much with on this journey is our constant comparison to others. It's something that we can't help ourselves doing. We look for people who have a similar diagnosis or they're going through a similar treatment plan, and it is sometimes all we think about, and we look at what they have as taking away from what we could have. And I think that that's something that we haven't spoken about enough. So next week on the podcast, we're going into comparison and how to stop comparing yourself to everyone else on this journey. So I can't wait to have you back next week for that episode. In the meantime, it would mean the world to me if you could share this with someone who is going through their own journey. Leave a quick written review. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. So I look forward to seeing you next week. And until then, I am sending you all my wishes as you continue your own journey to fertility.